Well, you also grew up in a kind of a sexist era for video games, really. It was just assumed that boys played video games when we were growing up. It was just, I don't think no one even assumed that a girl, like, they weren't even marketed towards girls when you were that age to even play games. Like, hey boys, you ready to play video games? Honey, why don't you go play outside? Don't scream too loud. Yeah, my dad was a gamer. The kind of an early form of a gamer, and he would vicariously introduce us to all of these game systems because I think secretly he wanted to see them. So he would buy like us an Atari and then a 2600, and then he'd give us the Intellivision, and then he always would give us new video game systems. I think he kind of knew how to resell the old ones or something, because the old ones would disappear. But yeah, I played a lot of the video game systems. I grew up a gamer, and I worked for Funimation for years and years. But when it was finally time, I'd gotten to a point at the company where either I was going to have to take somebody else's job. I was either going to have to take my boss's job or do something else, and I didn't want to take his job. So I started my own studio, partially because I didn't want to cause too much trouble, and also because I like video games, I think, more than anime. Like, I really just enjoy video games as much as some people enjoy anime. I like anime, it just takes too much, like, it's just not as interactive enough. I'm a little bit too ADD to just sit and watch something. I get real bored really quickly. So I do like video games. So I play a little bit of everything. I buy a lot of games just to experience them, to see what people are doing. I think the most recent game I played was Dishonored, I think, was the most. That was it was a good game. It got a bit repetitive, but it was fun.
Well, and although I don't play the games, I'm really drawn to the games with the great soundtracks. So I really loved when I did Fallout New Vegas, and then Saints Row. I mean, you can listen to the soundtrack, and I think that's pretty cool. Yes?
Can you do a real quick example for, like, Vicky from Fallout New Vegas?
Vicky was a hard luck whore who wanted to get out of New Vegas. And if you just come over here, I'll tell you a secret.
Where did you record the voices for New Vegas? Do you remember?
Yikes, I don't actually. I think it was...
You did it in California, right?
Yeah, it was in California.
It was Blind Light? Were they the ones that...
Yeah, it was something I hadn't been to. I thought it was, I think it might have been Studiopolis, their second, the Burbank.
Okay. I know there's a guy who's an audio director.
Sam Riegel directed me in those sessions.
Okay, yeah. There's a guy for Bethesda who I think was in charge of that game. I wonder if he would have been one of the clients. That I'm curious if you met in the game process.
You're not going to tell me his name or anything. You're just curious.
No, I'm just curious if you met many of the clients at all. His name is Mark. I don't know. Did you meet a really tall, skinny guy named Mark?
I'm pretty sure I met Mark.
Okay.
He had a lot of singing outtakes.
Yes. That was, man, so much voice work in that game, New Vegas. Like, so much in any of the Fallout games. Just that's the coolest thing about the video game business right now, is that as the systems get larger, the amount of assets that you can put into the system, like the amount of soundtrack and the amount of voice work is insane. And if you guys, I don't know how much you even think about this, but the sound design that goes into games, which we also work on, there's such a process that goes into that, because it's not as simple as just go, there's a sound for everything, you go out and record that sound, you edit it, you put it in the game. There's complex things that happen in the engine. Next time you play any game where you're driving in a car, imagine that when that car makes an impact with something, there's an engine that says, you have to kind of design an engine that says, if that car is going a certain mile per hour and hits X type of material, it triggers this sort of sound. Or if it hits, if it's driving on a certain surface, it's going to trigger a different type of sound. And so there's sound designers who actually make the individual sounds, and then there are sound designers who do the implementation, where they create these little 3D environments. You can, like, everything in a room when you walk around in a video game has a sound node attached to it. Like, if even like an air conditioning vent will have a loop coming from it, and you can put it in a 3D environment, and you have to tell it what the range is and how close you are before you start hearing it and how loud it will be when you get there. Video games are just a really neat world.
Yeah, and I was talking with some friends of mine from Game of Thrones, and it's an amazing show, but when you see what goes into it, my friend Miltos, who played the teacher in the first season that sacrificed his life, in the 1800s, theater was more about reality, so they would build these elaborate sets and try to recreate, like if there was a mountain climbing scene, they'd have mountains and real snow and animals. And once film came out, they realized they couldn't be as real as a film because it was taking pictures of actual scenes. So theater began to change. Now games have come out, and as real as we think movies are, and television, they used to put in a couple of sounds. But there are so many gamers right now that movies are having to have more sound and television more sound because our ears are now used to that attention to detail that people see in games. And for Game of Thrones, Miltos was telling me, they walk onto the set and they have mics and they've created things on the floor and the ceilings so that when they walk in, there is a sound design when they walk on it, even though it's not concrete, to sound like they're in a castle. So when they walk on this floor, it triggers a sound. So they're in a world where if they step into the part of the set that's outside, they hear crunching under their feet. So everything's triggered in this world, even maybe it's not completely real, even for the actors. He said it's strange because the acoustics, how your voice sounds, how your feet sound, when you lay something on a table, there's an attached trigger of sound to it that makes you feel like you're actually in a castle. And that was not how it was done 10 years ago. And that's a direct result of what we expect now from the world that games have created, and now we expect that on television. Yes?
That actually kind of reminds me of something. I did a mascot appearance to Big Kids in the World, and in a place called the Castle, they have drawers when you open it, they make creaking sounds or different sound effects. You actually throw a coin down the well in the building that makes a clink sound, and it's kind of cool.
I do a lot of stuff with that. I do it for fun sometimes. I buy a lot of triggers and things like that. You can buy sensors and triggers that can sense anything, and you can attach those values to musical values. Recently I did an art installation that had 6 different monoliths, and I had like 8 different flashlights, and there were sensors on each of the monoliths, and the more light that was on the sensor would expose more of a sound that was was attached to that particular sensor, and every so often all the sensors would change completely to different sounds. And they have ones that are proximity based, they have ones that are heat based, they have ones that can sense how many people are in a room and change sounds or lights that way. There's a lot of neat stuff out there sound-wise. It's fun to play with.
We had a question, I think it was in the second row.
My question is in regard to sound design. Has this new almost Ultra HD or HD take on sound, how has that affected Foley artists?
It's given Foley artists more work to do, and the science of sound design is changing too. The science of sound mixing is changing. Have any of you guys been to a Dolby Atmos theater yet? Do you know have you been to one of these yet? Dolby released a new standard. You know how there's 2-channel stereo, and then there was 5.1, and there's 7.1, and the movie theaters they have more complicated surround systems. Dolby just released their newest one that's in about 12 theaters all over the United States, and there have been 2 movies now that have been released in what's called Dolby Atmos, which has an array of 68 speakers all over the entire auditorium, and they can do discrete panning of any object. Before it used to be, you had to make a decision as to what speaker you wanted to put something in and how much of it was in that speaker at any given time. But now they can have, and they have speakers that go above you, so now they can attach one item digitally, and you can follow something like up and behind you and around, and it's like video game programming. As she was just mentioning, it's very much like programming a video game. Now they're doing it with theatrical sound.
Yes.
Oh, I was wondering, sir, if you could call me a fat rat bastard.
You're a fat rat bastard. You're welcome.
Are you ready?
All right, your work is done here. Yeah, you can sleep well tonight now. Like,
Thanks, sir. You have a very healthy voice.
thank you.
Very beautiful. All right, let's go.
You're beautiful. You sound great. See you guys.
What about my voice, right?
I know.
man.
Why am I not beautiful?
Yes.
Can I do Vegeta's voice? Why? Why would you want to hear that pathetic man speak? Oh wait, what's happening here? You're welcome.
Yes.
Weird question. I saw the video you showed me earlier with the, on your laptop with the doll sound. Have you ever taken apart a doll, reprogrammed the sound effect and put it back in and just screwed with people?
I've been trying desperately to hack my daughter's doll. His name is Scout. He's like this green doll that you can hook up to your computer and it learns your name and all that stuff, and I've been so desperately trying to hack it. I have hacked other items like speaking spells and things to do what's called circuit bending, and it's just like reconfiguring a toy or a device to make weird sounds. But I really, really want to desperately hack my daughter's doll, and I haven't been able to do it. It has a real proprietary chip in it. I was showing her earlier, my daughter had this really cheap doll that somebody gave her, that when you squeezed it, it did these really crappy, like, laughing sounds. But then one of them, it would cycle about through 5 different ones, and the 5th one was a really long one, and then after a while it would go, duh, duh, where the baby sounded like a Wookiee. It was the weirdest thing. Anyway, that's what brought that question about. You have a question.
I know you do. Prince?
I have a question. What does your shirt, what does your hat mean?
You can't see me.
You can't see. Oh. Oh, is that some wrestling? Okay. All right, I have more questions.